Hi there. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Monica Ahmed, Senior Communications Advisor at RPRA. Thank you so much for joining us for the second of our two proposed 2024 fees webinars for the Hazardous Waste Program Registry consultation. So this webinar will provide you with information about the consultation process, as well as the proposed fees, and there will also be time at the end to answer your questions. Just a little bit of quick housekeeping. So to ask a question, you can click on the Q&A tab that's at the bottom of your screen. Just go ahead and type in your question or comment and click send. You can also upvote a question or comment, and that'll drive it up to the top of the queue and help us to answer it more quickly. As I mentioned before, so we'll have some time at the end of the webinar to answer questions, but if your question is very specific, or if we don't have time to answer during the webinar, please feel free to reach out to our team. So you can email them at consultations@rpra.ca. So again, that's consultations@rpra.ca. And in case you didn't catch that, we also have it later on in the slide deck. Just send them a message and they'll be happy to help you out. And speaking of the slide deck, we'll also be sharing this deck with you via email. And we're also recording today's session. So both the deck and the webinar recording will be available on our website later this week. So you can feel free to go ahead and reference it. So I'm going to actually go ahead now and hand it over to Noah Gitterman, who is our General Counsel and Chief of Strategic Initiatives, that's a mouthful, to kick off today's presentation. So over to you, Noah.
Thanks, Monica. We usually start these presentations just with an overview of what RPRA is, Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority, and what we do. We are a regulator mandated by the Ontario government to do, at a high level, two different things. One is to support the transition to a circular economy, which involves winding up legacy waste diversion programs and implementing new resource recovery programs under a producer responsibility framework. And the other thing we do is build and operate digital reporting services for the ministry, and we run two of those services. One is our excess soil registry, and the other is our hazardous waste program registry. We are we're not part of government. We're an administrative authority created by statute. We don't receive any government funding, and all of our operations are funded through fees that we charge to our registrants, all on a cost recovery basis. And so the proposal we're talking about today is our proposal for 2024 fee rates for users of our hazardous waste program registry. And just like last year, we're proposing these fees in advance of the calendar year in which they'll apply. Maybe I'll leave it at that, Monica. We can go to the next slide. So we are mandated by the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to create and operate the Hazardous Waste Program Registry, to support registrants who are using the registry, and then to set and collect fees to recover costs, as I just mentioned. Just as a reminder, the Hazardous Waste Registry replaced the old HWIN system that the ministry was using. And as part of the registry, if you've used it already, there's an online reporting portal for waste, electronic manifesting solution, including a mobile app, as well as third-party APIs where certain users are integrated directly into the registry if they are high volume users of the system. There's also a public portal where any member of the public can obtain information about what's been reported, and a separate portal for the ministry So they have access to information in the registry in order to continue to operate the program. Although RPRA is operating the tracking and reporting registry, the ministry is still responsible for compliance and enforcement related to the program. So there's more information on our website about the Hazardous Waste Registry if you're interested. Next slide, please. RPRA has 3 sources to recover its costs. One is we charge fees to obligated producers who report under our producer responsibility programs. We also charge monthly costs to industry funding organizations. These are the legacy organizations under the Waste Diversion and Transition Act that are wrapping up old waste diversion programs. And then we charge transaction fees to registrants using excess soil and hazardous waste registries. So again, we don't receive government funding, so we need to recover our costs for all of our programs from one of those 3 sources. Next slide, please. We have a consultation process for the current fee proposal. It's very similar to what the process was last year, if you were involved last year. We are required to consult on our fees for 45 days, and then we need to post our fees, the final fees, for 30 days before they take effect. We began our consultation on 2024 fees on October 2nd. We're consulting actually on hazardous waste fees and most of our other registry programs. And the consultation will end on November 16th. You can share feedback with us by email at consultations@rpra.ca. All of the feedback we get, just like in the past, gets summarized in a report that goes to our board and as part of their decision-making around fees, and that also, after the board decision, gets posted to our website. So you can see what kind of feedback we got and what our response is. There's 2 webinars we're hosting for hazardous waste. There was one last week and there's this one this week. The recordings of the webinars get posted on our consultation page and the material from the webinars. There's also already some material on the website with our fee proposal. We go to our board in November to get a decision on final fees for 2024, and then the fees are targeted to get posted by December 1st. And so you'll get a notification when that happens, and with materials, including the final fee schedule and the consultation report. And that will all get emailed out and gets posted on our website. And so there's all this information is also on our website. We do encourage feedback, and we encourage you to share feedback as early as you can. There's no need to wait until November 16th. If you do share it early, that just makes it easier for us to wrap up that feedback for our finance committee and our board. Next slide, please. At a very high level, there are 5 components to our fee setting process. This will look the same as or similar to how we described it last year on our website, which describes some of this process and sets out principles that we follow when we're setting fees. But there's really kind of 5 inputs to our fees for the year. The starting point is our budget. And so our budget for the following year is set through our annual business planning process. So our 2024 budget has been approved by our board. Our business plan has not yet been posted to our website, but will be posted soon. And you'll see some detail in this presentation about our 2024 budget and what that means for the Hazardous Waste Program. So that's our starting point. The next input is our cost allocation methodology. So this guides how we allocate our budget to our different programs. This is important in part because we operate on a shared services model. So a lot of our programs share registry support services and registry IT services. And so we have a method for allocating that to each of the programs based on the activities that that program is driving within RPRA. Third input is accounting for previous year deficits or surpluses. So each year, we look at actual expenses for the program and actual revenues for the program. And if there is a deficit or surplus in the year, at the end of the year, that stays with the program and gets wrapped up into future fees. So that's an adjustment we make after we do our cost allocation to ensure that deficits and surpluses, that deficits get recovered or surpluses are taken into account when we set fees in future years. And then we take that cost allocation plus the deficit surplus adjustment and run it through a fee model, which determines who within the program will be paying fees. And we get to a fee rate, which because our fee rates typically based on volume of material that's generated, our estimates for what that volume will be in the coming year or years is sort of the final input into the process, and will determine, in the case of hazardous waste, fee per manifest and a tonnage fee. Next slide, please. So we'll be in the upcoming slides, we'll be going through sort of each of those inputs, starting with the budget. Thanks, Monica. Our budget is focused on our strategic priorities. These really define what our focus is as an organization for the year. We have 4 strategic priorities. They are the same or similar to the ones we have for 2023. First one is, and I should say 3 of these 4 will apply to hazardous waste. So the second one on the page here is delivering an effective compliance program for a resource recovery program. So we don't operate that compliance program for hazardous waste. So that one does not apply, but the other 3 do. And number 1 is providing registrants with accessible and easy to use registry services. So that's includes operating our registry, both in terms of customer support or registrant support and IT support, providing Ontario with reliable and useful recovery, resource recovery and waste information. So a big part of what we do is reporting to the public on the data that's in our registry. That's done through our public, for the Hazardous Waste Program, that's done through our public portal, and also in part through the ministry portal we have, so the ministry can extract or look up the data it needs to run its program. And then the fourth priority there is building an accountable, transparent, and sustainable organization. And we know that the government and our stakeholders expect us to operate transparently, and to do so in a way that we're sustainable over the long term. So that's our sort of fourth priority that guides our activities for the year. And we take those priorities and the activities related to them, and then set our budget for the year, which I think is on the next slide. So this is our, on the rightmost column is our 2024 budget. We're comparing it here to the 2023 budget, plus the forecast we had when we released our 2023 business plan, which would have been about a year ago. So our 2024 budget is on track to what we forecasted, although there are some differences, pluses and minuses in the individual budget lines. So for example, you will see that salaries and benefits and registry and IT costs are above what we had forecast. And a lot of that has to do with support we needed to provide to our registry users. And then those increases are offset by decreases in other categories, including the amortization line, which relates to paying off the cost of building our registries. Next slide, please. So this is just another picture of our budget, breaking down cost recovery targets between sort of the three big sources of fees for RPRA. So the producer responsibility programs, then our digital reporting services, excess soil and hazardous waste, and then our legacy WDTA programs. So you can see that breakdown, and we'll get into more detail on the next slide, please. So now we get into our second input, which is our cost allocation methodology. So again, we use this methodology to allocate our budgeted costs among our programs. And there are four main steps to this methodology. The first one starts with direct costs. So we assign direct costs to each of our programs. And the biggest part of those direct costs are the paying off the registry build costs for the program. So each program we run uses a registry, and the capital costs to build those registries are amortized over a 10-year period. And those that amortization amount for the program is a direct cost to that program. There may be other direct costs. We'll talk, I think we'll, for hazardous waste, there are a couple other direct costs, but the biggest piece is that registry is the funding to cover the registry amortization. Then we, once we assign direct costs, we have to assign common costs to each of the programs. And again, I mentioned we run on a shared services model. So our sort of back office shared among all the programs, but a lot of our other services, and in particular, our registry support staff and our IT budget is shared across all the programs. And we do that in order for us to try to be as efficient as we can when we're operating our registries. And so we have a model to allocate those costs among all the programs using cost drivers that direct cost to where the activity or where the effort is coming from. And so typically that relates to the number of registrants in a program. And so that's one of the key cost drivers we use to determine which programs are drawing effort or activity and where costs need to go. So for 2024, a bigger piece of RPRA's budget is being allocated using those activity-based cost drivers. And so we're doing that to try to better align our program allocations with where the activity is. And so if a program is using more of our registry support, we want to make sure that we're allocating to that program in a fair and reasonable way. The third and fourth aspects of the cost allocation methodology are relate to contributions to our operating reserve and contributions to recover startup costs that relate to when RPRA was first created. And so all programs contribute to those. Our operating reserve is about, I think it's targeted right now to be about 40% of our total budget. And I think the contribution each year in total is about 5% of the budget, I think. We'll have there's more detailed numbers, I think, later in the slides. But that's an operating reserve that we use throughout the year really to manage cash flow. So it's an important part of our operations and an important part of ensuring will be sustainable throughout the year as cash flows go up and down. So each program has a piece of the contribution to that reserve each year. And next slide, please. We included this information here just to, again, remind folks about the kinds of activities that the hazardous waste costs or fees are going to recover. So as I mentioned, a big piece is our registry development costs. So again, that's amortized. The total cost is amortized over a 10-year period, plus the interest or the financing for those costs. For hazardous waste in particular, there are operating costs from 2021 and 2022 that we need to recover. So those are costs from when we were building the registry. They're not capital costs, so they're not amortized over that 10-year period. But while we were working on building the registry, we were not charging fees. We didn't start charging fees till 2023. And so we have operating costs from 21 and 22 that we still need to recover. Again, we don't get funding from government, so the costs the activities we were putting into building the registry in 21 and 2020 and 22 now need to be recovered. And so we're proposing to recover those. I think on the slide here, it says a 3-year period, but we've extended that by a year. So we're recovering it over a 4-year period. We also have, obviously, all our current operational costs, which include our support officers, our call center, IT, and general admin, and that's everything we do to answer questions about reporting, keep the system up and running, provide guidance and training, both for registrants and as well for the ministry, to make sure they're able to access what they need to access. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the total cost allocation to each program and the increase year over year. So the cost allocation to hazardous waste is going up by about 19% year over year. And that is a result of higher number of registrants in the hazardous waste program compared to our other programs. And like I mentioned before, a greater portion of our budget being allocated based on number of registrants. There are also some additional direct costs for Haz Waste, including call center costs and some specific direct IT costs. But a big portion of that increase relates to shared registry support services and IT costs that are really being driven by the work we're doing for the hazardous waste program. We're still in the first year of this program for RPRA. And so there's already been some learning since we launched at the start of the year about what kind of resources are needed to support the program on an ongoing basis. Again, in terms of the registry support staff and IT. And so there are more resources than we expected in 2023 that we need to devote to the program. And that's why we're seeing the cost allocation increase year over year. So we do recognize that it's a substantial increase. It is RPRA's goal to have operating costs for the program stabilize. It is still a very new program for us. And we are working to try to get the best handle we can on what it will take to operate it on an ongoing basis. And so we're hoping in the near future that our hazardous waste and our other program costs will stabilize and we'll get more predictability in year over year increases. The increase we're seeing from 23 to what we're proposing for 2024 is really related to what we've been learning so far in terms of what it takes to support the service. Again, a lot of RPRA's programs are new, we tell our registrants in most of our programs that we have a sort of a shared goal with our registrants to get predictability in operational growth, and to try to translate that into fee predictability as we kind of stabilize our operations after a period of rapid growth. Next slide, please. This is another picture of our cost allocation breakdown for each of the programs. So this shows the amounts for some of the big components of each program's budget. You see the amortization, HWP is highlighted in yellow. You see the amortization in the first row. Again, that goes to fund the cost of the registry build. Component, which for hazardous waste includes interest on the registry development costs, but also those operational costs from 21 and 2022 that I talked about. Some direct costs, again, those are call center and IT related, our registry support and IT costs plus general admin costs, and then a smaller piece that's the contribution to our operating reserve. And then you've got the total budgets for each program at the bottom. Next slide, please. The next step after we've allocated cost to each program is to look at surpluses and deficits. So this is the first year we're recovering fees for the hazardous waste program. So we don't have any surplus or deficit yet to recover. We believe we are tracking, our revenues are tracking to what we predicted for hazardous waste. So we aren't predicting right now any significant deficits or surpluses this year, but the year is not yet out. We do, however, like I said, have operating costs from 2021 and 2022 that we need to recover. And so I think on the next slide, we show what those amounts are. Right, so in the second column with numbers here is under the prior year, that's with the header prior year surplus or deficit. That's the amount we're recovering for that 2021 and 2022 operating cost. And that's, again, spread out over 4 years. So we originally had a 3-year repayment plan on those costs. We extended it for a year in order to try to lower that amount for 2024. And because we extended that repayment for another year, we were able to lower the year-over-year increase to 12%. So on a previous slide, you saw the budget year-over-year increase at 19%. Once we add in the deficit recovery, so again, the recovery of 2021 and 2022 operating costs, which we've reduced, the year-over-year difference is 12%. I think on the next slide, we've got a final view of the hazardous waste program registry allocation with a comparison to 2023. Maybe this is the easiest way to see year-over-year changes. And so maybe I'll just highlight again in row number 6, those deferred, that line that says deferred operating costs. Again, those are the 2021 and 2022 costs. So that amount has gone down substantially because we've extended the repayment period. And that offsets some of the increases in the other lines. And so the overall increase from 23 to 2024 is 12%. Maybe the next slide, please. Yeah, so we'll jump right into what this means for our fee model and estimates and ultimately our fee rates. So again, we went through the budget, our cost allocation methodology, our deficit recovery. The next step is our fee model. So we're not proposing any change to the hazardous waste fee model. It's still a flat fee for manifests, for each manifest, and a tonnage fee on the amount of material. There are obviously, if you're familiar with the program, there are exclusions for each of those. And so we follow those exclusions, which are set out in a regulation called the Subject Waste Regulation under our governing statute, the RRCEA. So it's a tonnage fee on hazardous waste and then a per manifest fee. And then we use estimates for volume to generate the per ton fee and the per manifest fee. And so you see our estimates on the slide here. So we're estimating similar volumes to 2023. So about 250,000 manifests and about 230,000 tons, I think a bit less for 2024. So again, the total cost recovery is 8.3 million. And that covers all of the categories we've already talked about, including deficit recovery for previous years. We're increasing the manifest fee by $1 and the tonnage fee by about 10%. The manifest fee increase is being proposed to be proportionately higher than the increase in the tonnage fee. And that is being done in part to reflect the fact that there are a lot of manifests that are being tracked through the registry and that we support with our registry support officers and on the IT side that don't attract a tonnage fee. And an increase in the manifest fee means that the tonnage fee increase is not quite as high. You can see the comparison here on the slide. Just like in 2023, there is no, and in contrast to the old program, there is no annual registration fees. So these are all of the fees for the program. Next slide, please. This is maybe not a ton of interest to the folks on this call, but this is just a comparison overall of where fee rates are going for each of our programs. So fees may be going up or down for a lot of different reasons. Other programs are also seeing substantial budget increases year over year, like our Blue Box program. Some are seeing fee rates change because of big changes in our volume estimates for the program. And I think that's the end of our slides for this presentation. Is that right, Monica? Yes, feedback. So feedback is the point of all this. Obviously, we're here now to answer questions if you have them. You don't have to ask your questions now. So I will say that we want to hear your feedback on the proposal. But if you do have questions you don't want to ask now, or that you think of later, you can also email those questions to the same consultations@ripra.ca email address, and we will try to answer them during the consultation period. So it is a forum for you to ask questions and also provide us your comments on the proposal.
Great. Thanks, Noah. So we will be getting to questions. It looks like we just have the one so far. So if anyone has any burning questions, I encourage you to put them in now, or as Noah mentioned, you can send them into our or through our email address. But while we're on the theme of feedback, I'm just going to quickly ask folks on the line to fill out this super quick poll. It just helps us to gather information about our webinars and improve them in the future. So we really appreciate you taking a minute to just respond and let us know. And then after that, we'll jump into, again, looks like just the one question we have, but please feel free to take this time to put in any other questions you may have. We'll give folks another 30 seconds. Get those responses in, and then we'll move on to the Q&A portion. Lots of responses. Thanks again, everyone, for responding. Just gonna give a couple more seconds. Looks like everyone's got their responses in. So gonna go ahead and end the poll. Thank you again. And now we'll move on to, got a couple questions here. So Noah, the first question is, and I think that this question came in before you kind of went through the breakdown on the slide, but still I'm sure that some people may benefit from hearing this. Will the 19% increase for HWP be in the manifest or tonnage or both?
Both. So we're like we showed in the penultimate slide there, we're proposing a manifest fee increase and a tonnage fee increase.
Thanks, Noah. And just one more question so far, unless there are any others coming through. Can you be more transparent about some of your costs, like the number of employees you're paying? How do the development costs break down as well?
Right. So on that's a good question. More information on our budget will be in our business plan, which will be posted soon during the consultation period. You will, if you got an email for our fees consultation, you will get another notice when our business plan is posted, and you will see more information about our budget and where that money is going to in our business plan. Some of it is in the slides. So one of the earlier slides did have line by line budget breakdown, so you can see our salary and benefits budget, you can see our registry and IT budget. In terms of development costs, there may be a bit more information in the business plan. If what you're looking for wasn't in the information I just presented and isn't in our business plan, then maybe you can reach out again with the email and we can see what we can try to get to you that you don't already have. The development costs again is reflected in that amortization line in the slides. So that's a 10-year amortization. So the amount for hazardous waste is the cost to hazardous waste for its registry build, and that's the yearly cost, which gets paid off over a 10-year period. Some of that does include both the hazardous waste specific components of the registry and some foundational components of the registry that are shared across programs. And then there's the interest line, which is the financing cost for that piece. But if it's not, if what you're looking for isn't there and not in the business plan, which will be posted soon, then please reach back out to us, and we'll try to make sure we're presenting you the information in a way that works.
Great, thanks, Noah. And once again, just a reminder that email is consultations@rpra.ca. I see that we don't have any other questions. So again, if you do have any questions that you'd like to send our way, please use that email address. And with that, Noah, unless you had anything else to add, I think we can wrap up today's session.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thanks again, everyone, for attending today.